Hello Infiniteers, and welcome back to my Tron toy box. Today I am going to show you how to implement the logic for the light cycle arena. And I want to thank Sonic Photo for providing the inspiration for this in his Sam Flynn Into the Grid toy box that he created back in the day. I had an interesting discussion with him about that on the Discord a couple of months ago. And it was fun hearing him talk about it and what he went through making that toy box. So anyway, thank you Sonic Photo for doing that and for sharing some wisdom about it. Now the logic for this game is very simple. Much simpler than the Disc Duel Arena, which we implemented last time. What makes this game so simple is that most of what you need is already built into the light cycle. Pressing the attack button causes it to emit the light trail out the back, and if you hold the button down, it keeps generating the light trail, and any vehicle that touches that trail will be instantly derezzed. That all happens automatically without you having to do anything but drive the light cycle. Which means that all we need to do for our game is generate the enemy light cycles when the game starts and make each of them move along a path and detect when they're destroyed. And when they're all destroyed, we open the door to the canyons, and the logic that we need for all of that is pretty simple. Now to save time, I have already created 5 paths in my arena for the light cycles to follow, and let me give you an aerial view of the arena so you can see those paths. And by the way, if you're using the racetrack pieces to recreate the grid floor for this arena, you may want to move those out of the way temporarily so you can see the paths that you're creating. Alright, these are the paths that I made. And let me zoom out just a little bit more. I know we got that glare on the ground there, but I'll give you a view of this from above first, from different angles, and then I'll give you a little bit closer look down below so you can kind of see the paths that I've created here. And I'll let you create these paths for yourself. I'm not going to show you how to do that because creating a path is pretty easy, and I've shown how to do that in a lot of different videos. If you're not familiar with paths and you need some help, you can watch my Toy Box tutorial series, episodes 33 through 39. Now you don't need to place your path points exactly where I placed mine, but as long as you place them in a way that will give you shapes similar to these, that'll be good enough. And of course, if you'd rather make your own paths so that your light cycles move differently in your arena than mine, well, that's fine too. Alright, so I started off with a path over here on the side in this corner of the arena. And just so you know, it's kind of lined up with the edge of this terrain block here. It's the second one down. And it's in maybe 2-3 blocks in. Doesn't really matter. And it's going that way. So then I place the next path point just shy of the terrain seam. This one here, about there on the terrain block. Next one about here. This one right before the shadow. This one about here after the shadow. And I lined up this side of the loop going down next to the red blocks down there. Till you get to about this point across from where we started, and then I've got some points here to go around and make the loop. And I tried to do it so that each side of the loop was more flat than round, although it's a little rounder on the edges. But you can see it's kind of going in a straight line over here somewhat. Okay. Then I created another path over here, and I started on this end, and I went around this direction, And notice it goes past the opening here for the entrance. And it stops just shy of the terrain seam here for the first block. And we go down, follow that basically, and go around. So this is a shorter loop. And by the way, I also have a locator situated there, and the little blue dot points to the path creator. So this is where the vehicle is going to get generated, and it'll move that direction along the path, because that's the order that I created those path points. Okay, now I have another path. Let's see, we'll do this one next. Another really big path. This one starts on this corner, just before the edge of the terrain seam here. And I created the points going this direction. And they come around and go parallel to the second path that I showed you there. And these just barely come across this terrain seam that goes down the middle of the arena. And it goes all the way down and around the corner here. And again, you may have to tweak these points to get nice smooth curves. That one actually looks like it probably should get backed up maybe a little bit. Yeah, that's a little bit smoother curve. Alright, so that is the third path. The fourth one I started in this corner, and we're going to make this one go clockwise. The other ones kind of go counterclockwise. This one's going clockwise. So I dropped the first point here in this corner of the arena. The exit is over there, the entrance is down there. And I had the path points go along here, and it overlaps the first path. Okay, so this is the path we created first. Comes around the corner here and runs parallel to the third path that I showed you. And then around. So there's a little bit of overlap, but I'm trying to minimize that, because you can run into collisions with the light cycles. And then the last one, the fifth one, starts here. And again, this one also goes clockwise. And this is basically lined up with the floating island up here above the middle of the arena, like that. And it goes this direction around. Again, you can kind of see generally where I put my points to make the shape that I've got. If you don't get them exact, that's fine. Just try to get a shape similar to that and you're going to be good. Okay? So those are the 5 paths for the arena. The light cycles in the arena. Okay. Now the other toys you're going to need, let's start over on this end. So for the player, you're going to need a vehicle summoner to put their vehicle in and take it out when they're done with it. And I have 2 buttons I've placed here. And this is right near the entrance to the light cycle arena. I also placed these out of the decorations drawer just to let the player kind of know which button does what. So the one on the left is going to generate the light cycle. The button on the right is going to remove it. And we have a trigger area. And again, all I've done is place these Creativitoys out of the Creativitoys drawer. We have a logic gate. And I have a vehicle summoner next to every path point. So I got 5 vehicle summoners. 2 on this end, 1 over there, 1 over there. And then 1 here for this path point, 1 here for that 5th loop, and 1 over here for that 2nd loop. And then we also have a logic gate, a counter, which is going to keep track of the vehicles that we destroy, a sound effect generator. This is out of the gameplay toys. a text displayer, and a large block wall out of the blocks category. And I want you to notice how I've rotated that. It's not, if I bring it to the edge of this terrain block, it doesn't hang over the block. It sits like this. And that's important because when we drop it on the path that we're going to create here at the exit, it needs to be sitting flush with this wall and not sticking out from it. And speaking of which, let's go ahead and drop that path. That's the last creativity we need. That large block wall is 3 blocks high. So when we drop this, we're going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and one more. Drop a point and exit. Okay? And that will be the path that the large block wall will move along. Let's set the properties for that. While we're right here, this is on. We don't want looped. We just want to turn off auto start objects when connected. Then we're going to come up here to our block. And I'm going to style this using the, whoops, I hate that bug. I want to style it, not drop a path point. All right, let's try this again. Style the block, thank you. And we want to use the hologram theme. La da 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 da. Come on. You can do it. There we go. And then we will go into the logic menu for the block, do a new path connection. Connect that to our path at the exit. Okay. And then I want to set the properties on that large block wall. And basically we're going to leave pretty much everything set the way it is in here. But we're going to go down to movement style and we're going to set that to one way and stop. Okay? And there we go. Okay, for each of the paths going around the arena that our light cycles are going to follow, we want to set the properties this way. We're going to leave active on. We're going to set the speed to the maximum of 300. I turned on the loop flag earlier just so I could get the path points positioned right. And we need to leave auto start objects when connected on, or this isn't going to work. Okay, so for these 5 paths for the light cycles, we need to leave that on so that when we generate the light cycles, they will automatically start following the path. If you turn this off, those light cycles will just sit there. And I'm using a speed of 300, that's the max, and the light cycles move around the arena at a somewhat slow pace, but it's not too bad. If you want more of a challenge, you can come down to the path point options and set the speed modifier to 150 or 200. And if you do that, you're going to have to do that for every path point on the path. So you'll go into the properties for each one, set the speed modifier to 150 or 200. Whatever speed modifier you decide to use, set them all the same way. Okay? But 300 I think is plenty fine. Again, just set the speed modifier if you want more of a challenge. Alright, so we're going to set each of the paths the same way. So on this one, set the speed to 300. Looped is already on. Everything else stays the same. For this one is over here. 300. Looped is already on. For this one, loop to 300. And the last one is over here. Same thing. And again, you might just set it to 300 first. Play it and see what you think. If you want the light cycles to go faster, then you can go around and set all the path points with a speed modifier. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is come up to each of the vehicle summoners. These are what's going to generate our enemy light cycles. We want to go into the properties, and we want to turn on orient along the path and use driving physics. And then we're going to connect this up to the locator. This is where we want the vehicle to be generated. And we're also going to connect it to the path. Okay. And we'll do that for each of our vehicle summoners. This one here is going to go to this one in the middle of the arena. Generate it there. And then connect to the path that it's going to move along. And because each of these is connected to a different path, you need 5 different vehicle summoners, 1 for each path. So we can't reuse a vehicle summoner. Otherwise, well, let's go in here. You can connect it to another path, but weird things start to happen. 1 vehicle summoner per path. New path connection. We'll connect that up over here. New locator connection. Connect that up there. And set the properties. So the logic here actually is very simple. It just takes a little bit of time to set up. Because we have to set up each path, we have to set up each vehicle summoner. But if you saw the playthrough video, you know the results are worth it because it's pretty cool to play. By the way, if you do decide to use a speed modifier, since I'm turning on driving physics for every one of these, and you use a speed modifier to make it go faster, you may end up having to tweak your corners because this might be a little too tight for a faster speed. So you may need to tweak the path because otherwise it may overshoot the path and slam into the wall. So just be aware of that. I have found that to be the case on other toy boxes where I'm using vehicles created by vehicle summoners, and they end up, when they use the driving physics, they don't always follow the path precisely. They try to follow the path, but if the turns are too sharp for the driving physics, then they go off course, and then they do weird things trying to get back on the path. Okay, so there we go. We have set up all of our vehicle summoners and connected them to their corresponding path. Okay, and at this point, we're pretty much ready to go. Let's set up our counter next. Alright, so on the counter, this is going to keep track of the vehicles that have been destroyed. And we're going to set the target count on that to 5. Okay? We're going to leave this on so the player can see it when it changes. We'll leave this set to 0. We could turn this on, but I'm actually going to leave that off, I think. Otherwise, when you destroy the last one, it automatically sets itself to 0, which looks a little funny. You may have seen that on the playthrough video. On the sound effects, turn off 3D sound at speaker or locator. And on the text displayer, I'm going to set the text duration to 4, text style to banner. Alright, now let's hook up the logic. So the first thing we're going to need for our light cycle game is a vehicle for the player to drive. So, on this vehicle summoner, I think we're going to use all of the defaults. Yeah, just leave these set because this is going to be driven by the player, so neither of these is going to matter, and we're not attaching it to a path, so movement style isn't going to make any difference. Do notice, though, which way the logo on there is facing. The Infinity logo is readable, IN, and you would think the vehicle would be generated facing that direction, but it's not. It'll actually face that way. And that's the way I want, because I want the player, when they generate it, to drive into the arena and go. So on the button to generate the vehicle, when that's pressed, we'll come over to our vehicle summoner, and under Toy Box, we're looking for the light cycle. Light runner is not what we want. Tron light cycle, that's what we want. Okay? And then on the button over here, we'll use that to remove the vehicle from the toy box. And that's if the player decides they just want to race, or they want to keep replaying the light cycle over and over again. When they're done, they can remove that. Alright, so that gives the player their light cycle. Now, on a trigger area here that we've got, when they enter into the arena, we want to generate all of the light cycles. So, new logic connection. When entered by player, any, we're going to come over to each of the vehicle summoners. And again, we're going to go into Toy Box and select the Tron light cycle. That'll generate the light cycle and start it moving along the attached path. On the trigger area, when entered by player any, come over to this vehicle summoner, do the same thing, Toy Box, Tron light cycle. Again, this isn't difficult, it just takes a little time, because the arena is kind of spread out. Now, if you want, you can generate more light cycles in the arena. Put an extra path or two in there and generate some more. But it starts to get a little crowded in there. But it's up to you. If you're on a system with more memory and you think it would be more fun to have more light cycles, go for it. Alright, so we got those hooked up. When entered by player any. Next one is down over here. And one more. So how you guys doing? Are you building things in your toy boxes? If you are, leave a comment and let me know what you're building. I'd love to hear if you're building my toy box, or if you're building some other toy box that somebody designed, or if you're working on your own project. Just kind of curious. A lot of people work on a lot of different kinds of toy boxes, and some people, their ideas are things I never would have thought of. So, always curious to hear what people are working on. Alright, so now our trigger area is hooked up to generate all 5 light cycles. And we only want to do this one time, so if we have 2 players, we don't want the second player to generate a second set of enemy light cycles. So what we're going to do is on the trigger area, a new logic connection, when entered by player any, we're going to come up to our logic gate here, input into the gate, and on the logic gate, new logic connection on output, we'll turn around and deactivate this trigger area. So only the first player who goes through here will generate the light cycles. Okay? So now all of the light cycle generation is done. And at this point, the player comes into the arena, they use the light trail on their light cycle that they're driving, and try to put down a light cycle trail that the other light cycles can run into, and they'll automatically be destroyed. So our trick now is to detect when that happens. And the way we do that is there is a trigger signal on the vehicle summoner that tells us that. So on each vehicle summoner, we're going to do a new logic connection. When the generated toy is defeated, we want to do 2 things. First thing we want to do is come over to our counter, and we want to increment the count by 1. Okay? So that'll keep track of the light cycles as they're destroyed. The second thing that I thought was cool would be to have a sound effect when that happens. So on the vehicle summoner, new logic connection, when the generated toy is defeated, we'll come over to our sound effect generator. And under the general category, we're going to scroll down and look for the power down sound. That's about the best sound that I found that works. Unfortunately, you got to scroll pretty far down to get to it, almost to the bottom of the list. We're going to make those same connections now for every one of the vehicle summoners in the arena. Obviously not for the player's vehicle summoner, the one outside the arena that we use to get the player's vehicle. You don't want to hook up to that one. And when the generated toy is defeated, play the sound effect. Do-do-do-do-do. But yes, I would definitely love to hear what kind of toy boxes you guys are working on. That's always fun. Alright, so that one is done. We got both of those connections hooked up. Next one over here. And again, I could probably just fast forward here. But for those of you who are kind of new to toy box building, again, I don't want to skip anything. Those of you who are more familiar with toy box sharing, though, or toy box building and logic, could probably fast forward to the end of this little section here where I'm hooking up the vehicle summoners. If you don't want to watch me do all of this. Yeah, some people have left me comments on videos in the past few months to let me know they're building toy boxes for TV shows and cartoons that I've never heard of. And I'm like, what? And so I'll go look it up on Google, do a search on that cartoon, and it's like, oh, that looks pretty cool. What a neat idea. I always just find it very interesting what people are working on. One guy was trying to implement the some of the battles from the Lord of the Rings movie, and they were asking me about how to do large-scale battles. That can be kind of difficult in the toy box, but the idea there is to just generate waves and waves of enemies and just keep replenishing enemies, because you obviously can't throw 100 enemies in your toy box. You don't have the memory or the processing power for that. But you can throw down 20 or 30 enemies and just keep replenishing them. Have 4 or 5 enemy wave generators generating 5 apiece. And as soon as all the enemies for one vehicle or one enemy wave generator is generated, then kick off another wave of them. But yeah, I think that'd be pretty cool to defend a castle or do something like that. I think 72 Pringle built Helm's Deep toy box where he did that. And he also built a Wakanda toy box where he was defending against waves and waves of Thanos's minions. And that was pretty cool. Alright, I think I have all 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all 5 hooked up over here as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Alright, so all of the enemy vehicle summoners have been hooked in to increment this count when the toy is destroyed and to play a sound effect. One other thing I forgot on the trigger area over here, we'll do a new logic connection when entered by player any. I want to display a piece of text just to kind of let the player know what they need to do. So we're going to come over to our text displayer, and under the survival modes category, which is near the bottom, it's going to say defeat all enemies. Okay. So there we go. Now on the counter, we'll do a new logic connection. When the target count is reached and all of the vehicles have been destroyed, we'll input into this logic gate. And on output from this gate, we will do a reset and play on this path. And if you want to be able to replay the light cycle arena multiple times, then what you can do is, on the path creator, a new logic connection. When this is reset and played, close this gate. Okay? Because you don't need to do that multiple times. And the other thing you can do, actually not on the gate, let's do it on the counter, is a new logic connection. When the target is reached, you can come back over to your trigger area and reactivate it. So if you want to replay the light cycle game, instead of exiting the arena into the canyons and playing the story, you can come back over here and zip through this trigger area, which will generate 5 new light cycles going around the arena again. And what you could do is on the new logic connection on the trigger area, when entered by player any, have this reset the counter. And that way you can replay the game. And you can play it as many times as you want to your heart's content. Okay? And that is everything. Let's go ahead and play it and try it out. And then we'll wrap this up for the day. And before I do that, I am going to go ahead and save my toy box. Just in case there's a bug here, I'll be able to reload it. So I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, I have saved my toy box. Let's go ahead and play and see how it works. So we push the button to generate our light cycle. Notice it's facing that way, which is what we want. We hop on and we go through the trigger area, and now that causes all of the other light cycles to be generated. And again, if we hold down the attack button, that generates the light cycle. If I just push the button, oh, I got one. If we just push the button, it puts the light cycle trail down and it stops. But if you hold down the attack button, it leaves a continuous trail. Boy, I'm deleting these without even trying. There we go. It deleted itself. Okay, so that opened up the gate. But now the trigger area is reactivated, so we can play this again if we want to. But that's it for the logic for the light cycle arena. Leave a comment before you go to let me know what you think of it. The logic is pretty straightforward, but if you do need some help, I have logic diagrams for this episode on my blog, and I will put a link to those in the video description. Also, be sure to like and subscribe for more Disney Infinity Toy Box builds like this. Thank you for watching. Take care.